I left the walls drenched in the sweat and blood of the tenacious Norman besiegers. My comrades and I usually would rush straight to the inn after a fight, but not today. My father, the heroic Michael Nauticus, savior of Bari, awaited me. I found the wizened old man staring out the window towards the enemy camp. Foul, treacherous mercenary scum. Son, the inhabitants of this peninsula have courted mercenaries for centuries. Not one bit of good it did them. Weary of discussing Normans whose nature I knew all too well, I inquired about our rich family heritage. I asked my father instead to tell me of our ancestor Panos. My father spun round, his eyes gleaming. You wish to hear the story of the family? Our Greek blood runs back generations. Nauticus, our surname. It is so because we came as sailors. In the year 869, the night Panos Nauticus answered the summons of his Byzantine liege, Emperor Basil II. He was to lead a force by sea to aid our ally Louis II, the Frankish king against the Emirate of Bari. Panos was offered lordship of Bari after his victory, but he declined, wishing to live out his days in peace. Having brought glory to his house, he settled down and started a family. The old man mused for a while, his memory slowed by wine. Louis, on the other hand, ran into trouble with the Lombards. They were not fond of yet another Frankish conqueror treading on their soil. Suddenly, a bell rang, signaling an attack and calling the city to arms. I donned my armor and rushed out the door, leaving my father to his thoughts. I walked downstairs the next morning in a daze. The battle of the previous night was fresh in my mind, and it chilled my blood. I whirled around and found myself staring straight into my father's eyes. Nothing shakes the ghost of battle like a fine story, son. Come sit down to a meal and I shall tell you of the rebellion of Melus. The sun shone onto my father's gaunt face. He had a head of thick gray hair, and his limbs remained strong from years as a sailor and a soldier. I have donned mail since the year 1005, when I was but a lad in the service of Melus, the highest-ranking nobleman in the city. Ambitious and eager to prove myself, I soon became his best man. Melus was passionate, but his withdrawn, stealthy manner began to stir my distrust. When he invited all manner of mercenary troops into our beautiful city, I began to fear the worst. My father stood up to tend the fire. 1011. It had been 2 years since I had stood in the courtyard of Melus's castle in Bari. With the rebel garrison defeated, Bari was once again in Byzantine hands. Unsurprisingly, the local Katapan, or Lord, asked me to remain at the head of the force that I had recruited. Most of Melus's family was captured and imprisoned, but Melus and his brother Datus were still at large in the countryside. The rebellion was far from over. My father coughed and took another draught of wine. Melus sought aid from Salerno, while Datus fortified a tower on the Garigliano River. From there they gathered support and renewed their strength. Melus reached far for help. Lombards, Germans, and Apulians answered the call, eager for glory and plunder. But there was one more group whose help Melus enlisted. A new generation of Norman adventurers, forebears of the scum who attack our city as we speak. It is because of Melus that this new menace is upon us. In response, the Byzantine Emperor sent the General Basil Boianus and an elite force of the fabled Varangian Guard to meet Melus in the field and crush the rebellion for good. The armies drew up near the river of Fanto, not far from where the Romans had clashed with Hannibal of Carthage some 12 centuries earlier. The fate of Mezzogiorno was about to be decided. Not unlike its predecessor, the Second Battle of Cannae was a massacre. The Lombards and their Norman allies were no match for Boianes' strategic prowess and the ferocity of his Varangian troops. Melius fled the field and sought refuge with the Pope, which sent him to the court of the Holy Roman Emperor. He gradually poisoned the minds of several influential courtiers, and eventually the Emperor himself. Melius died in exile, but the effects of his political machinations were soon to be felt throughout Italy. The rebellion was over, but Boianes still had a difficult task before him. The once rich province of Apulia lay in tatters, and the hostility of its northern neighbors did not bode well for the future. Melius's brother Datus still preyed on the surrounding lands from his lair on the Garigliano. Additionally, rumor quickly spread of Holy Roman armies massing in the north. Boianes was not about to let his hard-earned gains slip away like a fish from the net. The odds were against him, but he had a loyal army and a plan. The Apennine Pass was the gateway to southern Italy, and Boianes intended to fortify it. Thousands of soldiers and masons followed him to the ruins of Acre, an ancient Roman city near the mountains, and began construction of a citadel named Troia. Boianes would restore the grandeur of Byzantine power in Italy, or die in the effort. The Holy Roman Empire was no trifling opponent. Many good men fell parrying the assaults on Troia. Boianes' forces struck out at Datus' tower on the Garigliano and dragged him from it. Following the ancient Roman custom, Datus was confined in a leather sack with a rooster, a monkey, and a viper, and cast into the sea. Byzantine Italy flourished under Boianes' tenure as Catapan. Alas, that the incompetence of his successors have brought us to this dreadful pass. Young men seek renown in the battlefield, thinking war a noble affair. Little do they know that their quarries are in vain. There is nothing but chaos, the screams of dying men, and the stench of death. I long for peace and cheer. I can hardly remember the sound of music in the streets, and the noises of a bustling city on market day. They have been replaced by the din of battle, the whistling of rocks hurled by Norman catapults, and the solemn evening tales in the taverns told by those who cannot forget the carnage of each day. My father approached, holding a sword and his old helm, breastplate, folds, and greaves. They are yours now. For 200 years, our family has proudly served this city. But today, you must leave this place. I am too old for the journey. But if you live, my death will not be in vain. Someday you will tell your son this story with the same pride as I have. Fight well today, escape, and secure yourself that future. The morning sun shone on the shores of the Aegean. I was speaking to a miller when I heard shouts from the harbor. Racing to the docks, I recognized several Barians disembarking from a battered vessel. The tidings were grim. Bari was in Norman hands, and my father had fallen valiantly along with it. I thought of his parting words, but I doubt that I will ever don his armaments again. Like my ancestor Panos, I have seen enough battle for 10 lifetimes. I think I shall travel the Empire, from Thessaly to Anatolia, seeking work as I go. With all luck, I will earn enough wealth to buy a house in the countryside, and raise miles of vineyards on the hillside. Perhaps one day, when I recount the tale of my family to my children and grandchildren, I will be able to conclude it with how we have found peace at last.